Hi, my name is Kyle, and I call myself a freak or freaks, F-R-E-Q-S, F-R-E-Q, and I enjoy the Freaks TV YouTube channel. My story with not only metal, but music in general, progressive rock and metal, comes down to basically discovering it. When I grew up in the 80s, I'm from Minnesota in the USA, where there's a lot of metal fans and progressive rock fans, but especially the progressive rock fans are sort of in their own sort of pockets, and they don't they know each other to a point, but they're not flocking to the mainstream. And the metal scene is very much of a niche community as well, but there is some bands like After the Burial and False, for example, the last decade have made some inroads into the metal communities. False being a black metal, atmospheric black metal band. But anyway, my history and why I like Freaks TV and why I like music, I like rock music and metal and progressive rock. My history kind of goes back to discovering pop music in the 80s, stuff like Huey Lewis and the News and Prince and Michael Jackson, of course. And then I discovered classic rock and Led Zeppelin, for example. So I'm just going to show with my sort of history as a microcosm as a music fan. I also will mention at the end of this video where you can find me online, but Led Zeppelin was my first favorite like rock band per se, you could say, and I just devoured them when I was in high school. And but then it led me to discover some others, Pink Floyd to an extent, and then later I loved Pink Floyd, their kind of psychedelic, album-oriented music, very dreamy, spacey, experimental, and then Rush became like my favorite band for a number of years. They were like Led Zeppelin, but more interesting in some ways. They were, great musicians and very adventurous, still album-oriented and very progressive in many facets. This being my favorite Rush album among many. So then after becoming a fan of Rush, I've naturally did get into some other music, namely my favorite band of all time, Marillion. This is their Brave album, Marillion. Discovered them. They actually opened for Rush in the 80s, but a lot of Rush fans enjoyed Marillion's music, and a lot of Pink Floyd fans, so naturally they're my favorite band to this day. I don't love every single thing they've done, but I've seen them live. I count now 5 or 6 times if you count the trio. Not in my hometown of Minnesota, though, in St. Paul, Minneapolis, but in Chicago, which isn't too far away. But yeah, why they're my favorite band, they just know how to hit the emotional sweet spot really well. And the bands that they've influenced and that they're influenced by sort of all connect. But I never will doubt them again. After a few years where they've made albums that I liked but didn't love, they put out some amazing albums in the last 15 years, including Marbles and their new one, Fear, F-E-A-R. So yeah, and along with Marillion around that time in the mid-90s, I discovered also Dream Theater, who were heavily influenced and connected to Rush. Dream Theater were taking heavy metal and progressive rock and making it their own thing, really. And even maybe more so than being a Rush fan, it sort of opened up the opportunity to discover a lot of other bands, a lot of styles of music, and especially metal music, because this is heavier. Their music was heavier than anything I'd ever listened to. This being my favorite Dream Theater album, their third album, Awake. So yeah, metal music, I became more of a metalhead at that point because the progressive metal stuff was starting to become more popular. Stuff like Fate's Warning and Queensryche, of course. Queensryche actually predated, both of them predated Dream Theater, but I was checking that stuff out, and then Sabotage and some other bands that were kind of doing progressive and power metal like Angra and Shadow Gallery. And so, but then the last 15, 20 years, I've still enjoyed metal, experimental metal, but also discovered more things that were being progressive. Not necessarily metal, but also, some metal bands. But the biggest discovery in my music taste was Kevin Gilbert. This is my favorite album from Kevin Gilbert. Kevin Gilbert, the late Kevin Gilbert, who was actually supposed to work with Dream Theater right before he passed away, or he was going to after that, but he passed away. But he's an amazing musician, songwriter, There's more on my social media and my blog that I'll tell you about in a minute as to why, but I basically came to conclude the guy was an absolute genius, and you know, even though he's gone, his music still exists for people to discover like I did. He blew my mind. So, just some other bands I've discovered since becoming a fan of Kevin Gilbert and and a lot of the other kind of progressive bands of the last decade and change. Dredge, band from California. This is my favorite Dredge album called El Cielo. Very influenced by Pink Floyd, but also very catchy at points, very atmospheric, and very modern sounding. Just their albums are almost all concept albums, so I love Dredge, love the kind of escapist nature of their music. It's very inspiring, very, I don't know, they're a band that just really grabbed me at the right time about 10 years ago, and I've loved their music since. Another band with an amazing singer that has become a favorite of mine is called Hours. Are they progressive exactly? Maybe in a sense. Their singer is a whaler named Jimmy Necco. He can just scream, and he has a huge range, and their songwriting is excellent, between like very U2-esque melodies to just very intense rhythmic sections to other moments. Ours is a special band, especially live, and this is their most recent record. But anyway. And then the last band over the last decade and change I've probably considered one of my favorites is the band called the Deer Hunter, D-E-A-R, who a lot of people do know. It's a band that's one guy named Casey Crescenzo who used to be in a band called The Receiving End of the Sirens, but it's progressive in a lot of sense in that very much diverse, using a lot of different instrumentation, very dynamic, and this series of Axe albums, which they've released 5 out of the 6 they're going to make, tell a very interesting, compelling, theatrical story. But yeah, that's my take on the gist of my taste on music with progressive and metal too. I mean, I love metal as long as it's being compelling, creative, if it inspiring, therapeutic. Heavy metal is music that, when it's at its best, can be incredibly moving and important. But to me, it has to not just have the metal element. I love it when bands combine something heavy with something beautiful, or something heavy with something odd or quirky, or just unexpected instrumentation, whether it be a xylophone or vocal harmony arrangements, or more than one style or 3 styles of vocals, or they're sampling something from a movie or something else. That to me is what is interesting about music, and why music really means something to me. My name is Kyle. I have a blog called All Media Reviews. You can find me on Twitter, on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, and on Facebook. And I want to thank Freaks TV for putting up this video and doing these profiles and making those cool profiles. Hope we get to see more of that, and hope to see you on social media. Thanks.